In our previous video, I showed you guys how to program a basic drum pattern and also how to use percussive loops to spice things up a little bit. Today I want to give you guys my top 7 tips in how to program a killer bass line. But before we get into it, I just want to say thank you so much to all the subscribers and also everyone. I am so thankful that you guys are watching my videos, and I hope that you guys find it helpful. So without further ado, let's get into the subject. First off, I think it's worth mentioning that if you've already programmed a melody like a chord progression or a sample loop, or maybe it's a guitar line, that it's advisable to rather program your bass line to your existing melody. The reason for this is mainly that a melody is a little bit more intricate than drums, because drums are one-shots, which means they are shorter notes, but melody will always involve pitch, tone, things like sustain, and therefore it gets a little tricky. So I would suggest first finding the root note of your melody and then program your bass line accordingly. And then afterwards try listening for other notes in the scale that you can use to basically fill up the bass line a little bit and to make it sound just a little bit more exciting. Yes, here is where music theory will come in really handy. But for the sake of the length of this video, I'm not going to break all of the music theory things down. I will rather leave a few links in the description box so you guys can check it out in your own time. Also, some DAWs actually have a function that finds the root note for you if you're not so apt with music theory. But my suggestion personally would always be to clue yourself up with things like music theory and sound engineering, like I said in one of my previous videos, so that it makes life easier all around for you whenever you program a beat. Woo! Here I have a trap beat I'll use to show you how I created the bass line for it. I used an 808 bass, which is custom in most trap beats. So let's listen to the rhythm section to check out how the drums and the bass work together as a collective to form a solid bottom end to your beat. Press play. The kick drum and the bass should hold hands, guys, like this. Especially on that very first note as the beat kicks in and it drops. Because if you're going to program your bass notes alongside your kick, especially on that very first note that drops, I assure you it will sound really sloppy, and that's why I call it the sloppy side kick. Because it's just not going to have the impact that you want that drop to have in the beginning. Throughout your cycle, you also want to pay close attention to do the same thing, to have your bass notes drop on your kick, because you are also going to use other notes to fill up the rest of your bass line later. Now it's worth mentioning that when you program your basic bass line, you will generally start with the root note first. But as I said earlier, you need to also add other notes in the scale to just spice things up a little bit so that it's less boring. So let me remove all the added notes and start off with a root note first. Let's just give the basic bass pattern a listen. And then afterwards I will add all the other notes back in, just so you can compare the difference and see what I mean. Okay, that's the basic one. So let me add all the other notes back in. And you will see what I mean. So the next thing to consider is the length of your notes. As you can see in my pattern, some notes are short and others sustain. Now, you may ask, why is that? There is really no clear rule for when you are supposed to sustain a note or not, but I usually sustain a note when I want to emphasize something in the melody of the beat, and or at the end of a cycle, just to, lead you back into the first note. Now keep in mind, this is all dependent on the feel of your melody, of your beat. So pay close attention to when a sustained note is dragging along and interfering with the rest of your melody or one of the other instruments, and where you can better make use of a shorter note. I'll lengthen some notes to give you an example. That sounds. Let's take this one away. Can you hear at the end there how it interferes with the melody a little bit? Yeah, you don't want that. So you just have to listen carefully and then decide for yourself whether it makes sense musically or not. Now the next step is to create almost like a call and answer between the percussive elements, your drums, and also your bass line. I will basically solo the rhythm section once more, so you can hear how in certain places this is evident. Now, as you will hear, the bass line will sometimes stop just before the next snare or click hits in the drum pattern, and alternate in certain other places as well by calling, and then the kick drum will answer. Okay. Another important factor is to let your bass line breathe. Now, you can program notes in every single space on your grid, but it will tire out the ear of the potential listener because the bass is such a heavy sound that you need to actually give it some breathing space, some spaces of rest in its arrangement to allow for the other instruments to also shine. Hey, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope that you guys found it helpful and that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, and also click the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified whenever we post new videos. And if you have some more questions, please leave it in the comment section and I will definitely get back to you. Now, thank you so much for your time, guys. I'll keep you in the next.